Hi, this is Max Sims, and I'm going to be doing a walkthrough of the TallyRCV software that I've put together and to be able to show you how that works. So first to start, you need to understand that this is a set of scripts that sit on top of Google Forms to provide the functionality that it does. So that does mean that if you want to use it, you do need to have a good, stable internet connection wherever you're going to be using it to do your tallying. So let's get started here. So we're going to be going over a few points on this. It actually doesn't take too long. There's a few steps you need to do before you start, and it's good to have ready to go before you are going to be needing to tally forms. Like if you're doing it for caucus night, do these steps before caucus night so that the forms are ready to go. And then the steps to actually enter ballots and tally it are pretty quick and shouldn't be a big problem. But we're going to be talking about getting into Google Drive. You need to have a Google account to do that. We're going to create a folder to keep all our files and documents we're going to be creating organized. We're going to create a Google form. We're going to create the Google form documents. We're going to create a Google Docs word processing sheet to keep track of the URLs for each of those forms. We're then going to go through the steps and show you the authorization that needs to happen so the script can run. Google wants to protect you, and so it requires you to go through some authorization steps. Then how you set up the forms so you can start entering ballots, how you enter ballots, how you tally results, and then finally how you view the report. So let's jump in and show you how that works. So here I have, this is a blank account. There's nothing in here. I actually created a completely new Google account to show you this. It's free from anything else. I've gone to Google Drive here, drive.google.com, to show you this is where we're going to put some stuff. So let's just start off by creating a folder where we can put our stuff. We're going to call this Caucus Night Elections. There we go. So now we have that folder there. Then what we're going to do is we're going to go to get and make copies of the stuff we're going to need. So we're going to go to where that is stored. So http://bit.ly/TallyRCV is where you're going to find the files that you need. Okay, so here we are. Now, these files you can't change or modify. You can make copies of them though. So first I'll point out we have this TallyRCV instructions file here. If you want to open that up, it's got basically a rundown of how you do this. It's pretty much the same as what I'm going to be explaining today, but you can go reference that at some point if you'd like. Then we have our TallyRCV beta. I will highlight that while I have used this before, it's been used in tallying ballots for elections before, there's always a possibility that it may have some problems still. I've tried to test it in a wide variety of situations, but I can't absolutely guarantee that it's going to be perfect. Software always can have little issues, unforeseen scenarios that come up. So just be aware, for some reason it breaks on you. I'm really sorry. It has worked great for a number of the situations before, but you might just have to resort to hand tallying the ballots if it's not going to work for you in your particular situation. But just realize that it's free software, no guarantees with it. Okay, so we need a copy of this file for each of the elections we're going to be running for caucus night. So you're probably going to want 5 of these unless you're also electing the treasurer, which means you'll probably want an extra one on there. So let's start by making a copy of this. We can do that by right-clicking on it, coming down to this Make Copy option here. Now that's going to make a copy in my account. The view we're looking at right here is a different account. And so after it's done, we switch back to our other tab, and you can see we have copy of TallyRCV beta. We're going to rename that so that we can keep track of it. We're going to call this precinct and then we have a fake precinct here, GL123, and we're going to call this chair. Okay. Then what we're going to do is we're going to just drag that into our caucus night elections folder so we keep everything together. We're going to go back and we're going to do this 4 more times for the other elections we're going to be running. There it is. We're going to rename this. Okay. Put that in our folder. I'm actually just going to make several copies here all at the same time. They're all going to be the same. Okay, and I can then just rename each of these one at a time. So secretary. State delegate. County delegate. Okay, so we've created all our files, we've given them different names, put them in our elections folder. So let's go in here. So here we are having there, we're going to create another file here while we're sitting here. We're going to create this Google Doc. It's going to come up, it's blank. We're going to name this caucus tally, or we're just caucus form URLs. There we go. That's probably a good name for it. Name it where you want. I'll just name it that. Now I'm going to have a URL for each one of these. So I'm going to have chair, vice chair, if I can type, secretary, state delegate, county delegate. Okay, there we go. Okay, so we're going to leave that open. We'll come back to it in a little bit. So we've already made the copies we need, so we don't need this tab anymore where we got our stuff from. We can go ahead and close that now. Okay, going back to our tab in our Caucus Night Elections folder. Let's start with the chair document. We're going to do some setup on this form document so it's ready to be used down the road. So let's open that up. As you can see, the document is named this. The actual form itself is still the generic TallyRCV. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to come up here, select all that, copy it, and I'm going to rename the form to be the same thing, just so we have it there. Okay, so there's a couple other things that need to be done. We need to get the authorization for the script taken care of. So what I'm going to do is, you can see there's this extra little icon up here that's, if you see the hover there, see if it come up, there it goes, that's called add-ons. If I click on that, then I have this special menu that's added in. The scripts put this in here called Caucus Tools. That opens a little dialog here, and we're just going to select set up election. Now we're not actually setting up the election right now, but we have to trigger something to get it to trigger the security or authorization stuff. Okay, so we do that. It's going to come up. It's going to say, hey, we want you to authorize that you're okay with this script running. We say continue. It's going to come and say, hey, we need you to choose an account to run with this. Great. Let's select our account. But then it's going to say, oh, this hasn't been verified. Google's trying to protect you. Well, if you trust me, if you didn't trust me, you probably wouldn't have got this far. So you need to come to advanced and say go to ranked choice voting. It's saying it's unsafe. Well, it works, but go ahead and go there. Then these are the things that it's saying it's going to allow the script to do. Honestly, the only thing the script is really doing is just reading from the particular form it's attached to and then writing out to an associated Google Sheet to put the results information into. Okay, so we're going to say allow. Okay, and it closes that window. We're back to where we are. This particular form has been authorized. You have to go through that step for each one of the forms. Each form has to have its authorization done. Okay. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to come over here. Actually, take that back. We're going to preview the form, and the reason we want to preview the form is because this is where we're going to go to enter ballots. Now, the form hasn't been set up, but we can get the URL to where we enter stuff into the form by going to the preview. And then we're going to copy this whole URL up here that's up in the title bar. We're going to switch over to our caucus form URLs. We're going to go ahead and paste that after chair. And now we have that form for the chair election there. Okay. Now we don't need this view anymore. We can close it or we can leave it there. We'll go ahead and close this tab because it's easy to get to anytime. We already got the URL. We're going to go back to our form for the chair election. The other thing we want to do is we're going to create a spreadsheet. This is going to do a couple things. It's going to store the ballots that get entered in. They'll get put into a tab on there, and there's going to be some result reporting that's also going to be added to this spreadsheet that the script does. But we want to make sure that's created before we do stuff, so let's go ahead and click on that. Go ahead and accept the name that it says right there and say create. Now it's going to open that up. There's nothing in here because it hasn't received any responses, any submissions to the form. We're going to go ahead and just go close that for now, but it's created for us, which is what we want. We're also going to turn off this accepting responses because you don't want people actually adding stuff to this in the meantime. Now, the only way that they can add stuff to it is if they get the URL to that form that we got off the preview. So make sure you're securing and not sharing, making sure that nobody can get access to these URLs. If someone has access to these URLs, they can go in and start putting in responses, which equate to ballots, into that document. Now, until the form is actually set up, there's nothing in there for them to actually submit. So, it is a little bit of a security thing, but they'd have to have the URL. They'd have to know exactly the right time to go in to start adding ballots into it. And honestly, you would also be able to see the total count of responses compared to the total number of ballots that you had put in. So it would be really quite difficult for someone, but you do want to be safe and be secure on that, so don't share those. And just to be safe, we'll make it so we can't accept responses until we're actually ready to do that. Okay, so we have done everything we need to do for this particular one here. So I'm going to go and do the same thing on the other 5, and then we'll jump over to what we do to actually enter ballots and tally. Okay, so I've created all of those documents. You can see that each one of these has their corresponding Google Sheet as part of it. And so we're ready to go here. This is how things should look. We can go over and look at our caucus form URLs. You can see I have a URL for each one of my positions that I'm running an election for. So all the election stuff is ready and set up to go. We hope this is how you'd want it to be before the night of caucus, so you have everything prepped and ready to go. Okay, so let's now change gears here. We are now, it's caucus night, we're ready to do some stuff, we're running the meeting. One thing that's important that you want to do in the meeting is, say for example, you're dealing with, initially the first chair is going to be the first position you're going to work on in the meeting. So you're going to want to accept all the nominations for chair, including those that may have pre-declared, and in the meeting take whatever additional nominations, but at some point you need to close nominations, so you have stopped being able to put any more names on the list of people who are going to run for the chair position. And you need to do this for each one of those as you go through the meeting, that you accept nominations and then close your nominations so you have a definitive list of who's going to be running. Okay, so let's go into our chair thing here, our chair form. Now we've closed nominations, we have our definitive list of who's running, so now it's time to set up the form, set up the election so we can start being able to receive ballots. So we're going to go to Caucus Tools here in our add-ons. We're going to say Set Up Election. It's going to bring up this form here. We're going to say, hey, the organization is GO123. We're electing for precinct chair. We have one seat. Obviously, for the chair is only one seat. We don't need an alternate. Your vice chair is basically your chair alternate. Then we need to put in all the names of the people who are running. Okay, so we're going to say, hey, Sally is running, and Jill is running, and Peter is running, John is running, we'll say Kay is running, and we'll say George is running. Okay, so here are the people that are running. You want to make sure you have your definitive list here, because if they are not listed here, they won't be able to be selected on the ballot as an option when you're entering your ballots. So anybody who could be on a ballot needs to be on this list. Okay, so we've double checked that we have all the candidates in there properly. We have a warning down here. Just read it real quick. This will delete and recreate all form elements and delete any entered votes. New setups will use fine. So we haven't done anything before. We're fine. We're doing a new setup here. If you need to recreate your form because it was not set up correctly, you will need to re-enter any ballots entered previously. Like I said, if for something goes wrong and something got screwed up and you missed something, you can reset it up again by coming to the setup election, but it's clearing everything out and setting it up from scratch, brand new. And so anything you've entered as far as ballot entries will have to be re-entered if you do this step later on. Okay, so we're going to submit. That is going to prepare our form here and our selection. This does support the idea of a ballot ID. I'm not really going to talk about that other than if you choose, you can ID your ballots and then you can put those in as you're entering ballots, and then in the results spreadsheet that we created earlier, those ballot IDs will be listed there. That does enable you to potentially share your results document so people can see, everybody can see exactly what each ballot got put in, but you would use an ID that would not be unique or not be discernible to who actually voted. Just the person who has that ballot knows their own ballot ID, but nobody else does. So that's possible. Most likely you're not going to be using that, but it is there in case someone does want to use it. Okay, our form is ready to go. Now we're now at the point of wanting to enter ballots in. We need to do a couple things before we do that. First of all, we need to go back to our responses tab and re-enable accepting responses, otherwise we're not going to be able to put anything in. Okay. Then we're going to go to our preview, and this is where we're going to enter ballots. So you can see this is how we're going to enter ballots. Okay, we can do it there. We can also come over to our form where we have this. If we want to send this to another computer, we can do that. We can just copy this here. I've got another tab here that we're going to show you real quick. Go to this other window. Okay, there we are. So this is, say, another computer. I can paste that URL in there. It's going to show the form. Now I could enter this in here. It's a different account, right? And that's fine. I'm going to go back to my other one. Okay. Oops. Okay, back to where we were. Okay, so go back to our form. Okay, so now we need to start entering ballots. So let's just quickly go through and put some in. We're going to say, hey, the first ballot was Jill, and then John, and then Peter, Sally, Kay, and George. Click submit. Submit another ballot. Now, one thing I want to point out here in this part is you do want to make sure you have a couple people doing this together, and they are verifying that yes, each one of these ballots is put in properly. So let's put in just a few more ballots. We're just going to randomly choose some people here. Put another ballot in. Now, one thing to point out is if I select the same thing, the same rank for two things, it's going to warn me. It doesn't want me to do that. Okay? So we're going to need to, let's say Sally was number one and George was last. Actually, I think I had that there before, so let's do that. Okay. Let's keep doing a few more here. Okay, keep moving along here. Just kind of picking some. Let's do this. And so it's going to take you longer than this because I'm just, kind of randomly picking the stuff as I go, just so we have some ballots in there that we can use. Okay, so we've got some ballots in there. We'll say that's good for now. And once we go over here, we can say, oh, we've got 8 responses, okay? Now, we're at the point where we're ready to stop entering ballots. We'd want to go here, probably turn off accepting ballots again, so that can be taken care of, okay? Then what we're going to do is we're going to come back over to our caucus tools, and once we know for sure that we have all our ballots entered. Now, one thing I really want to quickly say is, if you mess up in putting in a ballot, that's why it's super important you have 2 people and double checking every single ballot. If you mess up in submitting a ballot, it's incorrect, you've submitted it, you have to set up your election and clear it all out and start over. That's the only way to fix it. So just be aware you need to be very careful that you do this. Now we're going to come in, we're going to tally votes. Only takes a few seconds here. Bam, there's our result. Jill, John, Peter, side. Now this was only a 1 position result, so obviously only the top one counts. But what we can do is we can go back over to our responses tab. We can click on our little sheets thing here. That's going to open the associated sheet. You can see it's recorded all the ballots results that we had put in. Plus the script also added this tally tracking sheet, and you can see how it went through the process of determining a winner. So in this case, I'm going to expand this out so you can see these. You'll probably have to do that because this was automatically generated. So we have the total number of ballots or votes that were entered. It calculates what the majority needs to be. It has to be more than half. Half would be 4, so 5 is what's needed to actually win. On the first round, Sally got no votes, automatically eliminated. Now John and Kay both got 1 vote. The rules state from the state party that you eliminate ties on the bottom. So both of these are eliminated. Now, what this is showing you here is those 2 votes then went to Jill and George. These were the second place for those 2 ballots. So in the next round, we have 3, 2, and 3. Nobody got a majority. Peter was eliminated. His 2 votes went to Jill, the next options on that ballot. And then on the next round, now Jill has 5. She's hit the amount. She's won. And you can see how that goes the other. So that's how it shows. If for some reason eliminating too many of the bottom vote getters that were ties results in no winners left, or like say for example on the first round everybody had 2 votes or something like that, the script would then randomly pick one to eliminate, and it would put an R here, and that helps. That says it was a random selection for elimination. So that's basically how it runs. You would go through that same process for each one of the elections. You can see kind of the statistics here. This is the built-in stuff into Google Forms. But that is basically how it runs. You would go back to your sheet here and go through each one of those for every election you want to do. That's basically the end of it. So if you have any additional questions, if you need to have a little help, I'm probably not going to be immediately available to help with anything